Hello, good morning, and welcome back to Reaper Pro Tips with me, your host, Anne, and disembodied hands, Quindy, Justin, and John. Wait, it's not. Yes, it's not Quindy-less day. Tomorrow is Quindy-less day. Right, Quindy? I believe. Oh, there's crap tons of mages. I don't know. I'm like reconsidering what I want to paint this mini. Yes, tomorrow is Quindy-less day, guys. So we can either go hard on Justin or easy on Justin. Yeah, I don't know. I'm like going back and forth on this model. Now I'm just thinking about it color-wise instead of person-wise because like having done the hair and the skin and I really like it, but I'm not feeling the celestial vibe anymore. Like, and if you want to change something in the middle of your concept, you absolutely can. So But yeah, so I'm looking at it and I'm like, I don't know if I want Celestial. I'm kind of thinking about going purple with her now. Like when I was originally looking for inspiration, then I was like, oh, I should do this. But now that I've actually got colors on it. Yes, POTUS. Unfortunately for you and your productivity, we do this every weekday. I am hardcore, man. I do mini painting for a living, so because I'm living off my Patreon, literally, that means that I have the time to work for Reaper in the morning. So every day, here I am. So yeah. No, I hate. Okay, may I share something? I hate galaxy cloaks. I hate them. It would make sense. If this was a celestial wizard, absolutely it would make sense. What I hate is people who put galaxies on things where there's no reason there would be a galaxy on things. That's what I don't like. I don't want to do that, Pendrake. I think purple. I think I'm going purple. Yeah. Earth tones, like, she'd be so boring. I just did earth tones. I did the heck out of earth tones. Ugh. If I never see yellow ochre again for a while, I'll be happy. Yes, Nomad Zeke, when you're helping you make things worse. Yes, I think I'm going to start with purple, and I'm just going to rock from there. And unfortunately, having made that decision, I realize, oh wait, all my purples are sitting in the back of this room because I dragged them out for pentads. So, do we want to use, I might use a different purple. One second. Let me consult my purples, guys. Yeah. All right, we'll do that. We'll do a weird thing. So when I was picking out my purples for my Pentads PDF for Patreon, is that enough letter P for you? Purple Pentads for Patreon. Picking out when I was doing that, I came up with two purples that are different, that didn't fit into any of the recipes that I was thinking I wanted to present in the PDF. Because they really don't have a lot of, there's not a lot of shadows and highlights that would work with these. And they're the really intensive, very red, odd purples that are, I would call them wine colored. And I may use burgundy wine as a shadow, actually. But it's the new Orchid Purple and Pathfinder Kalian wine. So these are very, as you can see, one is a darker and one is a lighter shade, but they do actually go together quite well. So I'm thinking of using these because they will not be in the Patreon PDF. So, hey, Clavicus, 23 months. You almost made me sing. Almost. You'll have to do it next month. But yes. And thank you for the link to the Patreon, Quindy. I am doing a lot. Actually, I wanted to kind of shout out to my YouTube real quick. I got my YouTube report and I'm actually I gained almost 60 followers last month on my YouTubes. So thank you everybody who's coming from this stream and doing that. If you haven't followed me on YouTube, you should, because I'm doing a new series that's based toward fundamentals of mini painting. And I was so excited because I started brainstorming color theory stuff to do on there. So we are going to do very simple short lessons. That's what it's about. Usually I try to keep them less than 10 minutes, but I think a couple went to 15. But yeah, so go to my YouTube and subscribe if you haven't. My goal is to get to 1,000. I'm only at 356 or something like that, but I got 60 of those just last month. So I'm super excited we're growing. Yay, exactly. No, Orchid Purple is Kickstarter. It's a Kickstarter color from Bones 5. So it is brand new, and it may go eventually into a fast palette, who knows, but it is a Kickstarter color. That's why it has a core number. So anything in the 9,000s range, from 9,001 pretty much on up until you hit whatever is after the SKU number there. But this is actually in the core range. So it will be orderable just like any other core color, but like any other core color that is a high number, it is also very vulnerable to cancellation because it doesn't go on paint racks. So, yeah, so essentially this is a dangerous color. +1, yay! Thanks, Modus. Okay, so it's scheduled to release in April as a single bottle. That's perfect, because orchids, I actually have an orchid that is this color plus white right now, so. You killed too much time? Yeah, I also got totally involved in something this morning and had to run for it at the last minute. So I feel it, Shadow Raven, I feel it. It's real. Ah, yeah. Lotus Orange and Leaf Bud Green, also great colors. So, yes. But because it is going to be coming out, I did want to talk about it, especially because it's not going to be in a pentad. So, because it is such a weirdo. It's such a weirdo. So, I'm going to put it in this palette and show you guys the color. It is a beautiful color. It is you can see how reddish it is. Actually, let me see if I have anything. I might have to reach for like a near black color. I might have to reach for Rogue Shadow on this one to shade this to get darker. And that might be a great color succession. So see, I'm going to do this and then I'm going to be like, oh, this are the colors I could have used to do a pentad of these. Oh, well. OMG, 10 minutes late. Oops. Yep. So yeah. So we're going to start with this and we're going to kind of use this color to map it out. I'll probably go purple and gold on this. I kind of feel it. I'm kind of feeling it. It's been a while since I used my favorite colors. Purple and gold being I used to have a kind of like be in a rut with those colors. And when that happens, I try to break out of my rut on purpose so that I can like try some new stuff. But then we ended up doing like all of our colors right now almost are red, yellow, blue. So I went the other way. So now I can rebound now. I can go back to my purple. Now the thing about this color is that it is very transparent. You can see it here that even though I only dropped a little paint into it, it is very transparent. Now this makes it an excellent glaze. So if you want to intensify like a red or a purple, then glazing with Orchid Purple would be wonderful. However, because it is this way, we are going to have to do some things. I'm going to put 2 more drops in. So now it's up to 6 drops of paint. And then I'm going to put a little bit of pure white in it. Now, I've talked about this on a past stream, like here or there. But adding, when you have a very transparent color, but you still want to use it for a base coat, and you don't want to put 16 layers on, the best thing to do is to add some white to it. It won't change the color that much. And then when you put your next coat on top of it, just go with this straight color, and it'll be fine. It's essentially, with the white, you're adding coverage. It's going to change this color immensely too, just 1 drop of white. You're going to see it impact it. Because with a transparent color, you see it right away. Boom! Look at how pink that... See, you can tell how the color, like, just boom. It just implodes, right? However, you can see by how it's not falling off the side here, look how much the coverage is enhanced. Like, now, I'm getting a pretty solid coat, just with 1 drop of white. And I haven't changed the color that much. So essentially I can do this, and then for my next coat, go straight back to my Orchid Purple, and I'll get a beautiful color to start with. So whenever you have and there are so many beautiful, like somewhat transparent colors in Master Series, that having this trick in your pocket is very useful. Because you're gonna run into colors where it's just like you're fighting with them. Really just back out, just do your first coat, adding some white, and then do your next coat just straight up, and you're going to be fine. But anyway, that gives you an idea of the actual color of Orchid Purple. Once you add white to it, and that's another trick we've talked about, if you see a dark color like this and you're just not sure like what color it really is, you can always add a bit of white to it, and then you can see, oh, well, it's very red, and it's just got a little bit of purple in it. So there you go. The many benefits of adding white to your transparent colors to kind of figure them out a little bit better. Okay, now I need to think about composition. So I need to figure out what I'm going to do with the cape, what I'm going to do, where I want my purple. I'm thinking I'm not going far from the Celestial idea in that I do want to use some white on this, white and gold. But instead of going with blue, which is the more traditional, good guys color scheme, I'm going to go purple. And I feel like what I want to do is maybe make the inside of the cloak white, which is a weird one and requires everything here to be. The other option is to go with the purple on the inside and outside of the cloak. And let's see, how would that work? Then I'd have to go white with the bodice and these things here. That would very much change the feel of the figure. I could also go black, but I'm not going to want to go black with the inside of here. I'm going to want to go white. So now it's a challenge, right? And if I had any other, oops, I'm out of focus. If I had any other hair color than this silver, I think I would shy away from making the inside of this cloak white. But because I did do the silver hair, and because it's so bright, and because with the darker skin tone, it's like really, like, they really enhance each other, because this is a very orangey skin tone, and then we've got that blue hint in the hair. So this really pulls the eye. So I'm a little more confident that I can get away with making the inside of this cloak white, which normally, if I had like black hair up here, that would be a terrible idea. Because if I made the inside of the cloak white, the lightest thing would be like down here and not up here. And it would be hard to get attention up to the parts of the model that are important. Hello, Every Babble and Hero Dragon and Cousin Trauma. And wow, we have a lot of people. Hi. Hi, new people whose names I have not heard. I have seen Babel before. And Babel, didn't you just join my Patreon? Thank you. All right, so color composition-wise, going white with the inside of the cape would be bad, except for the fact that we have a very strong white up here. So if I go, especially if I go cream down here, that's going to play out nicely off of our purple, and it's also going to make this white, quote unquote, a little bit softer, so it's not going to distract from the white hair. So in that case, I can get away with going purple with my bodice and with my cloth down here, and bringing the purple in that way. And I probably will also go purple with the back of the cape, at least, the majority of it. I could do a two-tone, or I could do edging, and I haven't quite decided yet. I mean, this is ripe for freehand. This model just demands freehand. So, cool. Yeah, I think the white would work pretty well. Oh, you're newly addicted to painting minis. Well, awesome, cousin. Welcome. We are all long-term, a lot of us are long-term addicted to painting minis, but we have some newer people on the stream too. So welcome. Reaper is a great community. I do this stream for Reaper. I actually have been a Reaper employee for, oh my God, wait for it. April 1st is my 19-year anniversary with Reaper as a company. I worked full-time for 17 of that. And then when I moved out here to the West Coast to be with my guy, then I went part-time and started just doing the stream. So let's block in this purple. Just going to go kind of with sections. I'm keeping it thicker. It's actually at about a 6:1 right now, which is thicker than my base coats usually are, but because it's such a transparent color and I added white in order to make it cover, I kept it thick. And that's another thing when you do this, when you're working with a transparent color and your base coating, even after you add the white, you're going to want to keep it a little bit thicker. There. Okay, so that color, yeah, the color looks good. But yes, and if you are a newbie, I did this earlier, I should have waited to mention it, but be sure, follow me on my YouTube, which is if you go to YouTube and you search Painting Big, all one word, you will find me. I'm doing a fundamentals miniature painting series. I just put out like one a month, but there are 5 of them now. They're short videos that show you just kind of mini painting fundamentals that go over them and really break them down. So I hope that they will be valuable for new people. And I am trying to get my YouTube up to 1,000 people, 1,000 followers. So if you could help me, I would love it. I would love it, love it. And yeah, we're using Reaper paint, but a lot of the stuff I'm going to talk about on there, you can totally, substitute other paint lines in there. Just remember that other paint lines tend to be a bit thicker in body than MSP. So I just realized that's a belt and I need to put purple on either side of it. And as you can see, I'm being a bit messy. I like to make my base coats as neat as possible because it saves me touch-up time later. But it's, you know, if it's a little blurfy on this stage, it doesn't matter. It's kind of why I paint in sections like I do. It makes it very easy. I mean, because I'm going to be painting over this belt anyway, right? So if I blurf it a little bit and accidentally paint purple over it, it's not a big deal. Thank you again for the link, Quindy. Then my YouTube is right there. So yeah, if you're new, this series is for you, really, the Fundamentals series. I go over a lot of stuff. People seem to really like the Make Your Own Washes video so far. That's the most popular, I think that's the most popular video. There we go. So I'm trying to be, I actually switched to a smaller brush because she's so intricate that so much of her stuff is as small little sections with these borders and stuff. She's definitely a very fancy mage. So I'm being pretty precise, and I switched to a triple aught, which is not a brush size I usually use for base coating. But because I want to be neat and I want to look at my composition, I don't want to be slopping all over the place, I decided to do that. So we'll be going purple, gold, and white on this model, but I may throw an accent in there because there's room for one. There's definitely room for one. We could go purple and teal. I think I mentioned that last time, that I might actually go purple and teal with this model. It's a color scheme popularized largely by my friend Jennifer Haley back in the day. She won a couple of Golden Demon competition trophies with it. And it was the first time I had really seen teal and purple like thrown into the forefront of mini painting. Somebody may have been doing it earlier than that, but maybe not, because there weren't many women in the hobby at the time Jen and I were starting to compete. And a lot of guys were more into the primary colors. We would see a lot more red and blue and green and purple and stuff. And a lot less, I don't think anybody had really done teal and purple up to that point. But now everybody loves teal and purple. And I just haven't, I think because it was such a trope for so long when I started mini painting, I think that's why I haven't done teal and purple for a long time. Yes, the purple teal cult, It is, however, a fantastic color combo, and yeah, we'll probably use it on this mini. I used it on my Sacrifice mini for Crystal Brush, although the teal is very much a very small accent on that piece. It's mostly about the purple, baby. Purple and gold. Actually, that would make this mini a lot like Sacrifice as far as the color. All right, now down here on her boots, this is probably armor. And I'll probably give her leggings because I think I had decided to give her leggings. And that's why I hadn't done the skin tone down here. I didn't want, you could make her, technically she's wearing a robe, so you could totally give her skirts. And I also just realized that she has a connection point right here that I didn't take off. See the fill here to keep this, that little wedge. So we should take that off. I should be able to use a knife for that or a side cutter. I may use a side cutter and follow up with a knife. So let's do that before we do anything else. So side cutters can be handy in this sort of thing. You can just bring them in, use the flat side up against the part you don't want to damage, and just use it to snip out. So I took a wedge out, and I'm going to take a wedge out the other way. And then I'm going to use my knife to separate out everything. But having a little bit of kind of loosening up this part before you take a knife to it can make it a little easier. There. So I didn't take it out, but I definitely cut it up a lot, so now it should be easy. And this is Bones USA, so it is quite nice and soft to work with, although it is definitely it's not floppy. It's not like those PVC models from HeroClix where it was very bendy. The Bones USA actually is beautiful. It's like working with a softer resin. It holds detail like crazy good, and it's generally a joy to work with. There we go. Alrighty. So in other news, the Bones Kickstarter, Bones 6 is launching at the end of the month. So for those of you who are new, I wanted to bring this up because if you want a lot of models to practice on at a very, very low price, get on the Kickstarter and get in, if you can, get in the, during the Kickstarter when it's running. You can still get a discount if you join after the Kickstarter, but you won't get as good a deal. So we're talking as far as deals go, the core set specifically, Reaper with every other or every third or every fourth, whatever, with a certain number of stretch goals, Reaper keeps adding to the core set. The core set is a flat price. So the higher the Kickstarter goes, the more models end up in the core set. So when you're talking about like $120 core set and you end up getting over 100 models, that's cheaper than you're going to get miniatures anywhere. So if you are new especially and you are frustrated because, minis can be expensive, do watch for the Kickstarter to launch on the last day of this month, on the 31st of March, and go for it, because you can, and if you have to, you can place hold, because it doesn't deduct money from your account until the day the Kickstarter ends, which is going to be the end of April. But you can also just pledge for $1 and just add stuff as, just to get in, and then just add stuff. So you could do that too. Your wallet is terrified of that Kickstarter. Yes, and Quindy just linked to it. So you can sign up there to get notified when it goes live. Yeah, Shadow Raven, being aware that you're in a color rut is the first step to resolving it. Because when I notice that I've been painting something minis with generally the same darn colors, or the same general scheme. We've done a lot of red, yellow, blue, and it's not all bright red, yellow, blue. A lot of it is muted, so it can trick you. Because you're the ogre, he's actually earth tones. But if you look at him, he's totally a red, yellow color scheme, red, yellow, blue color scheme. He's just different. And it's not bad to, do a bunch of models in one particular, color vibe. Because it lets you experiment with that color selection. But when you notice everything is being that color selection, you're starting to get bored. That's when it's time to break it up. All right. And a lot of the time we do have a preference for certain colors, and we do get in those color ruts. And it is it can be hard sometimes to break out of them because you're so comfortable with those colors. You know exactly what to do with them, that switching to a different color scheme seems risky. And that's fair. But it is another reason to just kind of push yourself. Now I'm gonna go purple. I'm gonna paint the entire thing purple here on the back for now. We may change that up. I want a slightly bigger brush so that I can move faster, because there isn't a lot to dodge back here. So I'm gonna switch to my short, thick Escoda, because it holds a lot of paint because it's a thicker brush, but it still has a really good tip, so I can still be pretty precise. And it does let me go pretty fast. So as you can see, I'm getting good coverage with this, considering how see-through this paint was when I showed you guys the original before I added the white. You can see how much that single drop of white really helped. And now after this, we're going to go back and remix the original color, a batch of the original color, and put that over the top of this. And it will help it to cover and help us to get close to the original color we wanted. You could do that, Pendrake, but then I would be worried it would distract from the hair. Part of going with a cream is to soften the white and to make it not as stark as the hair color. Because the hair has blue in it, going teal white down here would kind of clash. The eye would expect those two colors to be the same, and instead they would be different. And that would not be a good effect. Because remember, when you're doing colors that are very similar to each other, when it's on a model, the human eye expects them to be the same. And so if there was teal instead of the silver blue here, the eye would be constantly looking back and forth trying to figure out what was going on here. Or worse, because the teal is warmer than the silver blue, it would be attracted down here, which is exactly what we don't want. If I'm going to use white here, I need to make sure that it's very separate from here and that this is definitely the part that's reading brighter and lighter. Yeah, slate blue is nice. Always go with slate blue. I like navy and slate blue for t-shirts. And gray blue. Yay, good. Awesome, POTUS. That's fantastic. Yes. Yes, actually, I can whip those out in a second. Let me get the base coat down on this, and then while we're waiting for this cloak to dry, I can grab those minis and talk about them for the new people. But essentially, if you order from Reaper online, from our online store this month, you have a very high percentage chance of getting a free bonus mini. That's a promotional mini from the Kickstarter. If you follow Rhonda, birdwithabrush.com, you will have seen her painting the adventuring party, and these miniatures are from that adventuring party. So let me just finish out my first coat here, and I think we're good so far. So I'm going to let that dry and go and grab one of those blisters to show you guys real quick. I should have just kept one near my table. Let's see here. I showed Mage, yes, yeah, he was the first one I grabbed, so we'll just go ahead and show him. So yeah, so if you order this month, you could get 8 Bones 6 promotional mini, one of 5 different preview minis. And this guy is an elf, a male elf, and all of these guys are very starting adventurers. So like none of them are super fancy. Like they seem like they're like first or second level adventurers. Uh-oh. I'm frozen. Yeah, I don't know. My numbers are still good. Hold on. Let me check. Oh, do a refresh then. Here, let me I need a little bit more chat. I didn't make my chat window as long as I like earlier. There we go. Yeah, weird. Okay, we're good. Yay! But anyway, so all of these guys are like basic adventurers. Like they're like first or second level adventurers, and they all fit together. But we've got a male elven mage, a female human rogue, a male warrior or paladin halfling, and then a female dwarf cleric. And then there's a little goblin that's kind of creeping up on them. So, or you could use him as a party member, as I mentioned. For those with goblins in their D&D campaigns, you could do him as a barbarian or a fighter. But anyway, so these are what you can get, and they will send you to the, be notified when this launches. And also there's a QR code at the end of March is when we're launching it. So, and currently everybody at Reaper is running around like a chicken with their head cut off, mostly Ron, trying to make sure everything is ready for the Kickstarter. Because the Kickstarter is an all hands on deck kind of event for Reaper. Alrighty, so now I'm gonna I put a fair amount of paint on there, as you can see. It is taking a while to dry, but with base coat, I like to do that. I like it to self-level. As long as you add water to it, putting paint on this thickly will not be a big deal. If you don't add water to it, then don't use this much paint on the model because you can get crackling if the top dries before the bottom sets. If I get nervous about that, I can actually take my brush in and just kind of pull up a little bit of it. I don't want to touch the dry areas, but the areas where it's still wet, as long as it's very wet, I can come in and I can pull it out. But that's risky. They fit together into a little party, Eric. Does Rhonda have a picture of the party put together, guys, up on her bird with a brush? I thought she did. There, that'll help it dry a little faster. Hey, he could be like a level 5 goblin warrior. You have no idea. He could be about to like cause a total TBW. Yeah, the bases interlock. And so then the adventuring party is standing together. Alrighty, so I am going to let this sit for a second while I mix up our original orchid purple. But yeah, it's kind of cool. It's a neat little idea. It makes it very easy to do a diorama with them. So I'm going to go with 4 drops of orchid, our original color. And one thing I may do, because remember that the darker a color is, sometimes it's harder to like tell the color right when you look at it. So I've got this orchid, but I may actually put like one brush full of this color into it just so I can lighten it up a tiny bit. There we go. That will also increase its opacity a little bit. So now it's a pleasant raspberry color. And I will put that color over the top of my base coat and we'll get closer to what I was originally doing. They're in the forums together too. Yeah, I thought I'd seen a picture of them together, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it was a patrons only thing, because for all the work, because she does a ton of work on those articles on her blog. She also does patron only content if you subscribe to her. It's only $5 a month. Rhonda always does good stuff. But it kind of helps pay for her time in putting together all that free blog content, so it's always cool if y'all go and toss her a patronage if you have extra patron money. I just realized I missed a part over here. I think I want the purple on the inside of the top cape. And then the inside cape here, the inner cape here can be white. But I think I want to alternate, so I'm going to do purple here. And again, I switched back to my tiny brush to do this because I want to be precise and I don't want purple all over everything that isn't supposed to be it. There, that's better. Yeah, I've seen it, so it must be somewhere. You're right. So the undersides of capes, usually I'll just paint them dark. I am going to paint this one purple first, but I'll probably end up just shading it. Because these are fill, not so much this top one, but this bottom part is definitely like a thick core of just like, it would never be this thick if it was actually fabric. So with that kind of stuff, usually you just don't want people looking at it, so you paint it dark. Painting something black or dark is a message to the viewer that it's not important. So if you're going to use black or a very dark color as a color on your model, remember that you must highlight it. You must make it clear to the viewer that it is something to look at. Because otherwise, in general, our human eye is tuned to look away from dark areas. We're looking for contrast. So a deep shadow where we can't see anything is not where we're going to concentrate our attention. That can be the challenge of painting a mini in very dark colors, is still making it visually interesting to the viewer. It's also why I don't recommend choosing a model for competition that you're going to paint mostly black. I've actually done that, and it didn't do well because it was too dark. Like it wasn't enough to stand out against all of the brightly colored competition, even though it was extremely well painted. So I learned my lesson on that one. That was a long time ago, though. Oh, it was on reaperlive? And the Facebook? Yeah, I have seen it around. I just don't remember where. Anyway, you'll have to take our word for it that the happy little adventurers... So we have a lot of purple back here, so we'll definitely do some freehand to break that up. But yes, you'll have to take our word for it that the Bone 6 promo models that you get in your orders randomly during the month of March can be put together into a collection of adventurers. Oh, there we go. Quindy, you're such a pro. See, now, if it was Justin on this stream, we'd never have gotten that. All right, so now I'm going to take that orchid purple. Remember, I did mix a little bit of this previous color into it, but in general, this is pretty much orchid purple. And it doesn't have nearly as good coverage as the first color, but because we put down that orchid purple and white mix, it's covering great. So this is a trick, again, that you can use if you want to, if there's a beautiful transparent color that you want to use, but you know that is going to be a bear to base coat with, this is what you do. You mix a drop of white into it. I did a 6-to-1. And then after you put your first coat on with that, you just do one more coat with your original concept color, and it works great. You can get a nice solid base coat. And 2 smooth coats is what I usually do for a base coat anyway, so I'm not even costing myself any additional work. So you see how that darkens it down. I wouldn't keep this original color if I was going white on the interior of the cape, because the purple that I originally put on was so very light. Contrast is the name of the game with miniatures. Asking for lots of links tomorrow. That would be actually pretty hilarious. I think that Justin is like just fire and forget for the most part on my stream, like, because we tend not to cause any trouble. Now I've cursed us, guys. Tomorrow is when I have major internet troubles and we don't have a Quindy to help us. Especially because it's supposed to be rainy today and tomorrow. And we all know that when rain hits California, at least here in the South Bay, like, the internet freaks out big time. So yeah, again, I'm using a tiny brush. It takes more time, but I like to have the mini look neat. It's rewarding to me. The one thing when you're painting, you know, if you get into kind of a zone where, like, you've got a habit while you're painting and other people think it's weird, but it actually helps you keep going, ignore those people. Like for me, I paint in sections like this and I paint very neatly on my base coat, and a lot of people would tell me, oh, it's such a waste of time, I would never do that. But in reality, this makes me happier with the model, and so it keeps me excited about painting it to do it this way. So don't be afraid to mess around and do whatever. Like, try base coating the whole mini, then try maybe painting in sections like I do. The core of why I paint in sections like this is that then I can at least finish a part of the model in relatively short period of time, you know. And when you're new, you're going to be painting pretty fast probably, but as you learn more techniques, you'll find that you slow down. And sometimes this can discourage you because it feels like it's taking so long to paint a model. But if you just paint like parts of it, if you switch and try my method here, like where I painted all the skin and then I finished the hair and stuff, I can always look at the skin and the hair and be really happy with them because they look good. And then it keeps me going on the rest of the model. And so as I work over the rest of this, as I finish each part, I'll get happier and happier. I think I am going to make that part of her at her throat also purple though. I feel like we're missing some purple right there. Yo, Joe for a Cowsick, go in. It is a day. I'm hoping it's going to be a good, productive day today. I'm excited about my lineup. About my lineup of tasks. For those following the never-ending saga of Anne and her book, I lost my developmental editor yesterday. She got a real job. So now I had to find a new editor. So I spent a lot of yesterday looking for editors and determining that I don't know how anybody can publish their own book these days. It's so expensive. Like I now can tell you why so many self-published books are kind of bad, because nobody's going to afford paying this much for editing, guys. Oh my God. It's atrocious. Wow. I had a bargain with my first editor. I was aghast. Let's just put it that way. I was absolutely aghast at the pricing. It almost is the never-ending story, right? Yeah. Except I like that book, and I don't want to compare it to the Odyssey of Frustration. Well, no, it's not that bad. I've actually been pretty lucky, and I'm still excited about it. So it's good. It's good. All right, let's get this in here. There, we've got our nice pretty darker purple coming out here, framing the figure. It's nice because it shows you the shape of the figure, right? So especially if we're considering going white with this or cream colored, we will be able to clearly see the silhouette of the figure. So after core skills and layer up, If you haven't gotten any of the fast palettes, then I would pick up a fast palette. Maybe Adventure Colors? What do you got? What do y'all think? Yeah, it's definitely more of a red violet almost, right? It's really pretty though. I like it a lot. This is why I said is why I decided to use like Orchid Purple, because it's such an odd color and we don't really have there's no good triad for it. Like I would say if you were trying to do a triad, I would go, because the color I mixed here, the lighter color when I added the white, is very close to Kalian Wine from Pathfinder, or you could just do the white mix that I did. And then I probably would use Rogue Shadow to shade it, although you could also use Death Knight Black. Surf and Turf Fast Palette. Yeah, Crows and Bones is yelling at you, but he's not really, or here, they are not really trying to be rude. They are just trying to say you need to get Walnut Brown and Creamy Ivory, but I don't know, is Walnut in one of the initial things is the question though, Crows. I don't remember what's in the Learn to Paint kits. I know what's in the first one. I don't think Walnut is in there, but I don't remember what's in Layer Up. Yes, High Seas or aka Surf and Turf. So Quindy says get the Surf and Turf. I mean High Seas or Horror Fast Palette. POTUS. And I love that one, and it does have beautiful colors in it. If you're looking to paint monsters, though, POTUS, I do have to say the original Dungeon Dwellers monster colors. Here, let me back up. I'm too close. I'm too close, man. All right, so the original fast palettes were the Dungeon Dwellers ones. This is the monster colors paint set. It's the red box. It has really good colors for painting monsters. Like I've used Ogre Skin, Knoll Pelt, I've used Kobold Scale and Goblins. I've used every one of these except Orc Skin, and that's just because I haven't painted an orc lately. So like Ogre Skin we used on this guy, and where's my Knoll? Where's my Knoll? We added some different colors and we used Troll Hide and some browns, but we also used Knoll Pelt to highlight our Knoll. So I have to say that I'm a big fan of the monster colors. If you're going to be painting like monsters and you want, these are more muted. They're not as bright colors, so they'd also be pretty good rounding out, I think, the initial LTPK colors. Okay, then yeah, I say Walnut Brown. Yes. Yeah, I could never remember High Seas Horror, POTUS, so I just started calling it Surf and Turf. And I'm afraid it's stuck. But it makes me happy that it's stuck, so yeah, Surf and Turf. The Surf and Turf Fast Palette. All right, so let's fill in. There's so many nice little details on this mini. I really like her. I would use this mini for a character for sure. I tend to play magic users or clerics. You could make this one a cleric too. MSP Bones Paint Kit number 4 has the monster colors. Oh, that's good. I would second Walnut Brown, though, POTUS, 9136, just as a single color to get. It's like a very, very dark brown, like almost black brown, but it's great for like a base for dark leather. Like when you want to, paint your belts and stuff, but you don't want to be really distracted by them and you don't want to paint them black. Walnut Brown then highlighted up with a bit of like muddy brown or russet brown or stuff like that can be a great solution. Walnut is also extremely high coverage. I used it for lining on this model to get the dark lines to make them the features here stand out. So walnut in general, one of the most valuable colors as far as MSP goes. And I'm going to come back and get this. And again, I use a fair amount of paint on base coats. I am not stingy with my paint. I think a lot of people's problems with smooth base coats are the fact they don't use enough paint. Yeah, I prefer darker leather. I did a lighter leather on... Let's talk about leather. So I did a lighter leather on Noel because I wanted to contrast with his dark body fur and the shadow there. We did a lot of dark colors on him, but I did do some nicking up to make it weathered. I really love this Noel. I love how he turned out. I might keep him. Ron might not get that one, guys. And then the ogre has a nice dark... This was definitely shaded with walnut and then brought up with other browns to be the cracked appearance there. So then that belt is the dark leather. And I'll probably go dark with... She's got these tiny little belts here in the pouch. I'll probably go dark with those because I don't want to conflict with any other colors. The nice thing about walnut is it's so dark that you can highlight it up with a bunch of different browns and it looks fine. It doesn't clash with anybody. It's a very neutral. It's more like a warm black than anything. All right, now we're going to get this nice dark color. It's a berry color, really. Sadie would love it. Poor Ron. Why are you saying poor Ron, Shadow Raven? Did you just, like, notice something that made you say poor Ron? I mean, remember, Ron is the guy to throw under the bus. It's always Ron's fault. This is Reaper's actual, part of the Reaper handbook, I believe. I don't have a copy of the Reaper employee handbook anymore, but when I did, I'm pretty sure that Blame Ron was on that list. There we go. So now you can see the contrast here between the color, the original color, and then the one we added a bit of white to. You can see how much flatter this looks, and this looks richer. And that's going to happen. The more opaque a paint looks, the flatter the color will appear. The more transparent it is, the more like deep the color will look when you put it on the model. So that's a thing. That's something to be aware of. The exception is if you are using a deep translucent color, but then the paint company has made it really, really matte, then you're going to lose the life. It's going to lose the life. It's actually why I don't like some paints that are really matte lines. MSP is kind of a nice, you can see a little bit of the gleam there. In it, it has a nice amount of what we call life to it. It's not a dead matte, and it's not a dead matte on purpose because it being a dead matte deforms the color. Oh, the Bone 6 Chronoscope school bus with Ron. Oh, Ron doesn't get, oh yeah, I'm not going to give him the Knoll. Yeah. Yeah, because I like the Knoll too much. Like, I like keeping a few models here. I do like it before ReaperCon when I've got all of these models that I've finished over, the past year. And I can constantly have something to whip out as an example of something I'm talking about. So, like, I do really enjoy keeping some of these. I just haven't decided which ones will. I know the Wyvern is going to go to Ron. I know that. The Crimson Herald's going to go to Ron. The Fungal Queen's going to go to Ron. The Vitanus Warlock, he'll probably go to Ron. So Ron will get stuff. He just might not get the Knoll. Because I think he wouldn't appreciate the Knoll enough. The Knoll's just a monster. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Ron would appreciate the Knoll. But I appreciate the Knoll also. And I also did a lot of the 28mm texture stuff on the Knoll. So it's nice to have him around as an example model, I think. Because if I send everything to Ron, then I've got nothing to use like as examples here and there. And it's very useful to not just have photos of your example minis, but to actually have them in hand. Like if I do a class, like, I'm thinking maybe next year for ReaperCon. I don't know about this year because I don't know how my timing is going to work out. But if I do a 28mm textures class, I would totally I would want to bring Noel along, you know, because he's such a great example. Although what I should do is a freaking brush control class. Nobody does that. Nobody in the world does that. But I think I could do it. Hey, Dark Angel. Sure, we can get her out. Hold on. Yeah, the school bus. Yeah. Hold on, let me put Minnie down. Stay, Minnie. We went with the Fungal Queen. We used colors that were based on the actual fungoid entry, the myconid entry picture in the D&D monster manual. So they have a full page picture that has a myconid that's kind of these colors. So I based my color scheme on that. And then the back is like that. So yeah, so if you look at the monster manual and you see the myconid facing page with the two myconids, there's one that has color scheme very much like that. And that's what I based it on. Oh no, Graniko. Well, I think Christine said she was resculpting a new Fungal Queen, so I would hold off and get the new Fungal Queen, Dark Angel. Because I think that was like her first model she sculpted, because she really, really had wanted that model for a long time, and so when she started sculpting, I believe, I remember her saying that was why she did that one. But now she thinks she can do it much better, and so I think she wants to do a new version. I had heard something of that sort anyway. Don't quote me on it, but... But yeah, I was pretty happy how that Fungal Queen turned out, but I can send her to Ron. There are some models I do that I like enough to keep around. There are some I like enough to go in the display case, which was the half work that we did. She definitely went in the display case. Even David agreed that she could go in the display case, and he's persnickety. Oh, that was not what I wanted to do. I reached for the wrong purple. If you do that, just get some water on your brush. Come back in and just take that paint right off. All right. So we've got that nice dark purple now, which I like a lot. And we already have our highlight color because, haha, we have a highlight color. I actually am curious to see how close this is to Kaolian Wine, so I'm going to squeeze out a little bit of Kaolian Wine. Kaolian Wine is this color. I think it's probably going to be a little darker than this. Yeah, it is. So Kaolian Wine is kind of like halfway between. You can see it right there. It's halfway between these two colors. But I think that I don't really need it's also a little bit more purple, a little bit less red. So I don't think I need that here. I think I'd rather go straight up, because when you bring up highlights, you've got a couple choices. You could use a color in between this and keep your paint thicker, or I like to thin more and just layer stuff up. So I probably would go from this color to this color instead of using this color in between, because I feel like the Kaolian Wine would just be too close to the Orchid Purple. Hey, Thormel. Twisted Oma, we're working with a weirdo color. We're working with Orchid Purple from the Kickstarter, which will be released next month. And then the highlight color was our base coat, and we did 6 drops of Orchid Purple with a drop of pure white. And I think I need to hydrate. Alrighty. So, what do I want to do here? I usually do shading. And I feel like I do want to play with some shading. And I was going to do Rogue Shadow, but now I'm kind of seriously thinking about Death Knight. But I may have taken Death Knight into the other room. Did I? Or did I just remove it from my desktop? I was playing around. Oh no, I brought it. Okay. So Rogue Shadow is a very purpley liner color. It's not labeled as a liner, and neither is Death Knight Black. But both of these are actually liners, like blue liner. So they just didn't have room for it in their names. So Rogue Shadow is kind of a reddish purple liner. So it would be a logical choice to use to shade this reddish purple that we're doing. But you also can just purposefully push things colder, and colder is toward blue, always. And so Death Knight Black here is a liner that has blue and purple in it. So we might get a better, more, maybe not better, but a more complex shadow out of using Death Knight than Rogue. And what I probably will do is I will mix both, and I will decide which one I like best. You could also just use blue liner. Blue liner doesn't have the purple in it that Death Knight has. So I will do kind of a quick mix and see which one I prefer. Also, I'm losing my mixing brush here. I need to put that Killian wine in there. I need to add a little water to my, since I'm not going to use this as a base coat anymore, but as a highlight, I'm going to add another drop of water to that mix of 6:1 Orchid Purple and White. And then we'll build a shadow color. We'll do it in the well up there. And our white, our palette is making our colors distort, so there we go. So let's try a 1, 2, and then a 1, 2. And then let's try a drop of Rogue Shadow in one and Death Knight in the other and see what kind of color we get. Now, the liner colors, this can be interesting because liner colors are typically weaker, but Rogue Shadow is actually pretty strong. And so I'm curious to see, it might overwhelm our orchid. 1 drop. And then the Death Knight, though, is a little bit more translucent, and so I feel like Death Knight will work nicer. Remember that not having coverage for your shadow colors is actually a bonus. Usually you're either using them as washes or you're painting them into the shadows and you want to kind of blend them in. And when you're blending, you want transparent paint because you want to be able to build up layers of it and have it look blended. So I'm going to add a lot of water to this because I want to see what the colors end up looking like. Yeah, that's interesting. That's a very bruisey purple on the Rogue Shadow. I'll get some of that up here for you guys. There. So that's that color. That's interesting. And it is darker, definitely, but it's definitely stays in that red arena. Whereas here, pardon me, this one I expect to go more purple. Yeah, it does. It goes more blue. And that's more like that. So you can see the difference. This is definitely staying more red. You can see the blue playing in this and making it a darker purple. You could use either of these for a shadow. If you were trying to do a shadow that's a traditional triad, which is the shadow is just a darker version of the color that you have as a midtone, then this would, the Rogue Shadow mix would definitely be proper, and I would add another drop of Rogue Shadow into this to even take it darker. But I kind of like to cool my shadows off a bit, and by cooler, again, that's toward blue. So I'm actually veering toward this one. I like the Death Knight. My gut instinct was that Death Knight would make a better shadow for me, and I think I'm right. No, Rogue Shadow is actually quite red, and the reason that you think it's brown is that reds are mixed with black to make many browns. So when you first look at it, Shadow Raven, Crows, when you first look at it, you may think it is brown. But if you look very closely at it, you can detect the red shift. Reds mixed with black tend to either go purple or brown, and Rogue is kind of midway between those two. And that's just paint chemistry. That's just knowing how the pigments interact with each other, which is something you learn by trial and error. There. All right. So I think I want to go cooler and bluer. Where is there. I want to go to a different brush now. Oh, mini. God, David hates it when I do that. He ate it. Joe Ferg. But yeah, it's definitely more reddish than brown liner. So I want to shade a bit on the back of the leg here. I'm going to block shadows in. This paint's going to be pretty transparent, but you can see my shadow there. Because it's transparent, I may need to layer a couple of times to get a dark shadow out of it. But I also want to line this. So actually, let's reach for... I think I'm going to do a mix. I'm going to mix Rogue Shadow and Death Knight to get a proper liner for this model. The reason I'm mixing them is that I do like the red tone. I don't want to go as blue with my liner as Death Knight is. I want to keep some of that red. And I think these two are going to give me a pretty good middle-of-the-road red-purple liner. No, Sky Shadow is my secret. Wow, that was my secret thing. I didn't know that they did a random thing with it. Okay, so Sky Shadow, what you need to know about it. It's a very, very interesting paint. And of course, Reaper probably didn't even know because they just found it and they sampled it. So, Sky Shadow is the color of the shadows under a blue sky. So how I made Sky Shadow is I wanted a general color that I could mix in or glaze over other colors to make them look like they were in a natural shadow under a blue sky. So I went outside in the Reaper parking lot where the shadows of things were falling over the white stripes, and I essentially duplicated the color of the light that the sky made bouncing in the shadow. So Sky Shadow is that. It is that. It is extremely transparent because it is meant to be glazing. It's meant to be used as a glaze. So you can get very similar to that with Void Blue, by the way. Because I decided that Sky Shadow was just, to get the color right, it had to be very transparent. Like, there was no way I could put coverage in it. And so I decided it was a fail as far as colors for Reaper went, because Ed always wants a certain amount of coverage. But it really is Sky Shadow. That is what it is. It's the color of the shadows on a sunny day under a blue sky in Texas. So if you have it, thin it way down and glaze it into your shadows if you're trying to do, if you're doing a model where you're using yellow and white to highlight, where you're definitely going for kind of, they're under a sunny sky kind of look, like a warmer highlight. Try to use that and see if you like it. But that's what Sky Shadow is. It is special. It's very unique. Nothing else like it. I just didn't know. Reaper's, the problem is marketing, right? Is sometimes I feel like one thing we could have done better is to explain how the various paints work. That's why I do so many of these videos talking about that thing. Talking about this kind of stuff, explaining to you guys what things are, how to use them. But we didn't have that back when I was creating this stuff. And so I didn't feel, sometimes I just felt like nobody would ever get how to use it. And so I just didn't put it out. So yeah, I just mixed Rogue Shadow and Death Knight Black. It makes a nice, complicated black, by which I mean it's not a simple black. So let's see if I can show you guys. So it's a soft, very complex gray. See it? And the great thing about this, it's got a little bit of a blue tone to it. That's not bad. It's cool. But it's black, definitely, which is cool. Very interesting. What that tells me is that the pigments in here are kind of canceling each other out. So that tells me Rogue Shadow does have a bit of brown in it. But it also has red. So, all right. So that's what happens when you thin that down. But we're not going to be using it that way. We're using it 4:1 as a liner. So it kind of is a black liner, but it's very soft. As you can see, it's more gray than anything. It definitely has a grayness to it rather than a hard black. And so it will give us a line that is more subtle than using, if you used pure black to line a model, it would look very cartoon character. It'd look Borderlands almost art style, because very comic book. Because that's how you do comic book style, is you use the black shadows. But here, this is a much softer black, and so it's going to be more subtle. It's not going to be as harsh, and it's not going to read as comic book. But I decided I wanted to kind of mix this up and see how it would work. Lining is just very, very elemental shading. I'm going to be doing a video for my YouTube for the fundamental series on lining this month before I start doing a couple of theory ones on colors. I'm going to do a lot of little theory videos on colors and highlights and shading for my YouTube in the coming months. So I blurfed a little there. That's not bad. If you blurf and you get a dark line here where you don't want one, that line got very thick, put my little base coat color right over the top of it to tamp it down. And that should wipe it out pretty well. Oh, hush. You get sunshine in Scotland, Cornico. It'll come. I know we're having a dip back down into colder temperatures later this week also. It kind of sucks. So I feel your pain. So that's a straight line there, but I can rinse out my brush really quick and use some water to fuzz that line and blend it in. So now I've got my liner mixed up so I can make a harder, see how that makes a little bit of a harder edge around here? It brings out the details. Yeah, I have a rainy, it's supposed to rain a little today, though I'm seeing some blue sky peeking through now. We had a 40% chance today and tomorrow, so we'll see. We did get a little bit overnight. So at least we got a little for our plants. So it can be very hard to line when you get down to these tiny little areas here, these little cutouts. And sometimes I'll just make the line kind of go up onto the belt a bit if I want to keep that tiny bit of purple there. There, and so this is where brush control is key, and lining itself, doing this sort of thing, will make your brush control better. If you never practice it, it will never improve. There are many other ways to get better brush control. If you are on my Patreon and you have trouble with brush control, there is a Build Brush Control Faster or Build Better Brush Control Fast I think video from a couple of years ago featuring a dragon. But that gives you all my tips for building brush control. Lining is one of them, and I go a lot more in detail about how on that video. But suffice to say, if you practice your lining, you will develop better brush control because it's requiring you to do a finer line that's more precise. And the more you practice something, the more your muscle memory is going to get it. Oh, interesting. So I maybe did this wrong. I just noticed there is a line here which suggests that her corset is actually just a bodice, and that I should have made the top here the same as her sleeves. So I may consider, or I may just do it all purple. Yeah, I think if I'm going to break everything up nicely, I think I do need to do her sleeves this purple. August 27th. That is somebody's birthday. I know I have somebody in my circle with that birthday. So since I realized that these sleeves need to be purple, I'm going to go back in really quick. Block them in. But yeah, learning lining is, again, it's another tool in your toolbox. And you definitely don't want to ignore it. Because if you don't like the dirtiness that a wash can give a model, then lining is your next choice. Like, that's the next thing you should concentrate on if you don't want to do washes. Then you learn to paint in shadows. But lining itself, if you just do a neat base coat and you line a model and put a highlight on it, the model will look amazing. because lining is just very, very economical shading. Very stripped down shading. Alrighty. So we got our sleeves in. Yeah, I like that. Okay, cool. More purple. More purple! More purple can't be bad. Now remember that lighter color was just our base coat to give us a nice solid base coat for our more berry color. Orchid purple. So I finished reading a very frustrating novel for my book club, my new book club, which is part of my new writers group, last night. But the next book club novel is we're going to go back and read Snow Crash by Neil Stephenson. I'm so excited because I haven't read it for like 20 years. Gosh, I read that book so long ago. But I loved it, so I'm really looking forward to rereading it. Yes, it's very, very economical shading. And it's especially for 28 millimeter POTUS specifically. As I get big, as I work bigger and bigger as far as scale, I scale back on the lining and replace it with just generally deep shading for a more natural look. When you get to large scales like busts or statues, lining tends to look a little bit weird. But because the model's casting realistic shadows, so you don't need that overemphasized stripped down shadow unless you're doing comic book style. No, I would say it's gone forever, crows. I made a single batch of it. I suspect they just kind of threw a label on it and put it out as part of grab bags to get rid of that initial sample. And it's probably dead. That's why I said, don't worry about it. Use Void Blue if you want the same effect. You will need to thin it with sealer and water. Hello, Sir Necronomicon. Welcome. We are purpling. We're purpling. We're definitely purpling. And we're talking about lining and how it's very, very efficient shading, very stripped down shading, and how if you don't like the kind of dirty look you can get from washes and all the touch-up you have to do, lining is your next best friend as far as techniques to learn. So I've kind of custom mixed up a little bit of a liner color, and I'm lining around my purple just to give it some definition, because this model has a lot of precise little details, and I like crisping those up with putting a dark line after I do my base coat now, and I'll do my shading as well. No, yeah, it's not on the list. It's like I said, it is, if you have a bottle of it, it is super special and super unique, but it's also, like most people, anybody watching this video probably tried it and threw their hands up in the air and chucked it because it is so transparent. So if you have a bottle of it, it's very special, but as mentioned, it's very similar in color to Void Blue. And if you want a color that will give you that same effect, but that is actually in print, Void Blue will do in a pinch. Void Blue is what I reach for if I can't find my bottle of Sky Shadow. So don't obsess about it, because it's gone. Yeah, Sagebrush. Actually, we talked about this just a tiny bit earlier. I mentioned that when I started painting and competing at Golden Demon, which is the Games Workshop National Painting Competition, now back in America for the first time in like 10 years, it seemed like it was mostly male. Like Jennifer and I were like some of the only women competing, and it seemed like a lot of it is more primary colors. Part of that is GW, right? Because they use all the candy coated colors for their Space Marine armies and stuff like that. So you got a lot of strong greens, reds, and blues, a lot of royal colors like that. And purple was reserved just for like undead and like Slaanesh Space Marines. So it really wasn't like and remember, a lot of people in this hobby got in via Games Workshop, and also got in via Dungeons and Dragons. And you still see a lot of that primary color stuff. You like look at your chromatic dragons, right? You've got red, you've got green, you've got blue. You don't have purple. So purple was, I think, perceived as rather a girly color for a long time. And as as more women got into the hobby, and two, as attitudes got more open toward purple, and purple became a kind of a good genderless color, quote unquote, then I think you see more purple nowadays. Also, there's a very real chemical reason. When I started making the Master Series paint line, I told the person I was working with, who used to be, is a person who's no longer at Reaper, I told him that I wanted, he'd done the past paint line. I told him I wanted to do a really dark purple. And he's like, yeah, it won't sell. Like, flat, hands down. Like, would not sell. He's convinced that any time he had tried to do a darker purple for any of the past paint lines that he had done, he'd done a couple of them, nobody wanted it. So, for one thing, he said it would take too much pigment, and so it would be too expensive. And for another, I feel like maybe just the pigments that you needed to make a good high-quality purple just weren't there. Or just weren't accessible to most hobby companies. Purple is problematic for a hobby company, especially when you're trying to make a high-coverage color. Purples are naturally translucent. They do not want to cover. You have to load white into them to make them cover. That's the easiest way to do it, just like we did with our base coat here. So trying to put out a dark purple was considered foolhardy for all of those reasons. You'd have to use a ton of pigment. It wouldn't cover. Maybe you didn't even have access to a good purple pigment to use, so you always had to mix, and it wouldn't be a great color anyway. So I feel like, and then you had the whole, most of the hobby was guys, and many of them just didn't like purple. At that time. And so you factor in all of those things. I'm just putting a deep dark shadow up here against the back of the cloak. I'll probably paint over it, but I want it there. So I think that all of that has, kind of played in. And then when you get to today, many, many painters love purple. They popularized it. You have higher quality paint with better coverage and better pigments so that you get some beautiful purples that you never would have seen back in the old days. People have a much better, greater appreciation for colors that aren't just primaries. Like trying to sell something that wasn't a grape purple, just a normal bright grape purple, was really hard back in the day. But nowadays, people are looking for unusual purples and unusual colors in general. And they like them more, and they understand how to use muted colors more. And so with all that, you get more variety. Does that make sense? It's beautiful obviously for mages. I use it for all sorts of stuff because I love purple. But I do feel it's like cultural and chemical, and the attitude of companies and what they could deal with. Also the attitude of mini painting in this country, which accents and still accents coverage over like mixing and complication of colors. Like we're still taught, majority of mini painters in this country are still taught via, gaming principles. And that means you want a base coat on the model that covers and you're done. Like, you want a fast paint job. And so there's less, and a lot of board games are using, more primary colors because it's attractive. And so you get into that whole marketing thing too. And it's a very complicated answer. But I think all of those things have played into it over the years, depending on where you lived and who you were by, there's always exceptions. But now purple's just a very popular color these days. And also like everybody's a lot more open about liking, like there's just a lot more, like people don't just paint like in primaries anymore. There was a lot, and a lot of it was Games Workshop related, I think. But when I was a younger person painting, a lot of people just liked the brighter colors, and they still do, to some point. But I think there's a lot more people who like who understand that a more muted color can be beautiful too. So I think sometimes otherwise, another thing people can get into is they're like, well, I don't know what to use purple with, right? Like if you are really new at color theory and you're really hesitant, but you know that red and gold go together. You know that blue and gold go together. There's some things you can really really understand easily just from, seeing representations of it. And so sometimes I think people stick to very simple color schemes because they understand them a little bit better. And maybe purple just isn't as, immediately accessible that way. I don't know. Because it's great if you're doing purple and gold, but what if you're not doing gold? Then what do you put purple with? Yeah, clear magenta is the secret to highlighting purples, pretty much. Might need to touch up this hair a little bit as I got in here to do that shadow at the collar. But I'm just going to keep that shadow going and we'll be all right there. So I put that heavy shadow there at the neck. She does have a little bit of a shirt on there, and I'll have to decide what to do with it. I may make it a dark color just to have contrast. Red purples are more popular than blue purples, but I also prefer blue purples. I like the indigos specifically. Yes, they couldn't get a consistent color. Yeah, pigments are weird on purple. And part of that quantum is probably because they were looking for light fastness, and magenta is notoriously bad for light fastness, like as far as it fading over time. So it's gotten better over the years, and the light fastness of our current magenta is pretty stable, but that does not surprise me about Lego. But yeah, I do feel like it is a more popular color today for many, many of those reasons. And purple and yellow are my favorite colors. I used to have a purple car, even. Now I have an orange car, which is just as cool. Although David has a teal car, so if I had a purple car and David had a teal car, we would have the painting, the classic painting color combo. Alrighty, so let's see here. Okay, so we're almost done with the stream. Just another 5 minutes. I'm just going to line a little bit here. I like to do the lining after the base coat, sometimes in conjunction with setting up my shadows, because lining is a shadow. Because I like to kind of outline and define the areas I'm going to be working on. Put kind of a border there between the color I'm going to be highlighting and the stuff that's all around it. Kind of bring it out and make it stand out better. You can see how the line here, the dark line, makes these colors and these areas stand out from each other. And like I said, I just go slow with the lining. You won't be perfect at it. Probably the most important thing I can tell you is that you should have very little paint on your brush. With liners, you don't want to thin them too much, but I'd at least thin them 4 to 1 to 5 to 1. And when you load up your brush, use a brush with a really good tip if you're going to line, obviously. A long, skinny brush, I think, works better, but not too long. Just like as long as skinny in this guy as this guy. But then you want most of your paint off your brush, and that lets you control it better. If you have more paint on your brush or it's runnier, it'll run all over the place, and that's, the worst thing. That's what you really don't want. But if you have a brush with a good tip, and you make sure that you get a lot of the paint off of your brush so that it makes a nice point like this, lining gets to be a lot easier. You still have to develop your muscle memory so you can do precision, but at least nothing else will be fighting you. And that's so important. Like, that's how it gets very frustrating in this hobby, is when you set yourself up to fail. And that's why I'm doing this video series, and it's why I do the Patreon. It's why I do all of this instruction, including this stream, is I don't want you guys to be set up to fail. I want you to be able to enjoy the hobby, get really excited about it, and exceed your own expectations as far as what you can do with it. That makes me super happy. So my focus is always going to be on removing some of the frustration level and setting you guys up to succeed. And one of the first things just to keep in mind with that is thinning your paint and getting the paint, like getting a lot of the paint off your brush so that you can have control. All right, so we've got, and you can see I'm just I lined around that dagger handle just because I could. I was there. I've put a little bit of a heavier shadow underneath both arms there, just because there would be one. You can even see it, like when I tilt the model toward a light source, you can see that there should be a shadow there. So that's why we put it there. Yeah, long nails could probably impact. Yeah, have fun at lunch, Shadow Raven. Teal goes with red, but red and purple, they can go together. That might be a little bit too much. It depends on the amount, Queen of Kings. So here, okay, real quick. Color theory. Bing. If your colors are close to each other on the color wheel, they will fight. So that is the problem with red and purple together. The reason that red and purple still do work together often is that purple is much darker than red. When you are dealing with art or mini painting, any type of art with color in it, contrast is king. So if you must use colors that are close to each other on the color wheel, make sure that one of them is dark and the other is light, and you will be fine. So if you are using a bright red for an accent and your purple is pretty dark, you're going to be okay. But if you start using like a lighter red violet, like we were working with here, and if I tried to use red on this model, it would clash because these are too close. Now, if you look across the color wheel, we find blue-green over here. That's very close to red. So red and teal, it's directly opposed almost to red. So essentially, blue-green, teal, works really well with red and red-orange. In fact, David, my fiance, loves that color scheme. He loves it. He uses teal and red and teal and orange all the time. So really, the only downside there is then where does your purple go? So you could, if your main color scheme, I would probably go main color scheme maybe with red or red, orange, and teal. But then I would use maybe purple as either a darker color on the model or as an accent. I don't know that it would work great as an accent though, because it's just, it's not quite. You could use purple and teal and then use a bright red as an accent, and it might work depending on your other colors on the model. But just keep in mind that when you start working with colors that are closer to each other on the color wheel, you have to make them different some other way. And usually that means one of them should be dark and one of them should be lighter. Yes, and Quantum has an excellent point. If you want to introduce purple to your teal and red color scheme, the easiest way to do it is to use purple in your shadows. Because purple is a natural shader for red. So... But yeah, the color wheel is useful that way, Queen. Just to remind you, that colors that are farther apart in the color wheel go better together. In general, they'll be more in harmony. You don't have to worry about them clashing. Now, that holds as long as your colors are fairly bright, moderately bright. If you start muting out colors, like adding gray or brown, or using, a color that's more like Highland Moss, which is kind of a gray, yellowy green, then you've got some changes to make, because if you try to use a really bright color with a really grayed out color, they do tend to fight. So that's another rule that I tend to teach in my color theory class. When I teach my color theory class. I do not know about ReaperCon this year, whether I will be teaching. I may have to go and get a puppy. And if I have to go and get a puppy, then I won't be teaching. So yeah, so we're pretty much at the end now, guys. I started putting in a little bit of shadows. You can see that shadow right here underneath there. I started putting a little bit here and there and there and behind that leg. And they're pretty subtle shadows, but you can still see them. And they still help. Look at how nice this is looking now. And when it's fully highlighted, it'll look even better. Because we've got shadows and lining, and, we just need a bit of highlight up here now. So you can see how even a little bit of lining helps to crisp up your edges, bring out like just make different areas stand out better. I missed a little spot, so I'm going to do that real quick. We talked about color theory today. We talked about how to make transparent colors work better today, because our purple here is very transparent. How to get a good base coat out of a transparent color, which is very useful because a lot of the prettiest colors in MSP can have a bit of translucency. If you like to paint with dark colors, you're going to notice that there's a lot of transparency going on. And that's because usually the easiest way to add coverage to a color is to add white. So when you've got a beautiful dark color, you usually don't have any white in it, which means that the coverage is entirely up to the natural coverage of the pigments involved. And if it's a purple, red and blue don't cover great. So you end up getting that. And magenta doesn't cover at all. Alrighty. But I think she's come along well. We need to shade, of course, the back here as well. And but I love this color. I think this color is going to work great. Oh, Crow's Nest will be on today at 5 p.m. Central. Oh, with Bobby Jackson. So we're talk showing. So that's awesome. So do show up for Crow's Nest if you want to hang out. Bobby is always entertaining, as are Jason and Michael. So thank you all. Tomorrow is Centaur Day. We're back to our Appaloosa. Our Appaloosa Centaur that we were doing, which I really am happy with him so far. I need to bring up the highlights, I think, a little bit. Actually, the horse pieces are looking pretty good. We might do a little bit of highlighting on the hooves and tail and the hair, essentially, of the dark parts. But then we'll probably block in a skin tone on this guy tomorrow. That's what I'm thinking. But I'm really happy. I love how the Appaloosa parts turned out. I want to go paint horses now. So we'll work on Centaur tomorrow, everybody. Thank you all for tuning in. I hope you have a great rest of your day. Kerniko, I hope that you get some sunshine eventually. All right. Have a great one, guys.